There's nothing like adversity to boost ingenuity. Tyrrell proved it several times, one of them in 1997 when they recycled old wings into mini-wings in a desperate attempt to get more grip at high downforce tracks. They were ugly, but effective. Even Ferrari ran them, but not everyone fell under the spell. A neat designer like Adrian Newey was having none of it for his elegant McLaren. Finally, the FIA deemed them illegal for being unsafe after the 1998 season.
When one takes into consideration the efforts that were made by a team, of course it's disappointing, but we were one of the people who got some real advantage out of these side wings. I think, to be truthful about it, there was a impairing of vision from a driver's point of view in terms of what he could actually see. And if there is a question ever of safety, you have to side on the safety aspect.
In late 2005, Renault developed a simple mechanical device fitted in the nose of the car that comprised a weight mounted in a spring. They named it a tuned mass damper, and it improved the car's performance by dampening out tyre bouncing frequencies throughout corners, and therefore keeping grip levels more consistent. Look how much the Ferrari vibrates over the curb. And here's the Renault going completely off track. As you can see, the car itself would stay almost flat, as the suspension absorbed the tyre bounce. For 2006, and with FIA approval, the French team also fitted the system in the rear of the car. Of course, other teams tried to copy it, but they didn't get nearly as much of a benefit. With the use of mass dampers growing, however, the FIA stepped in and outlawed them completely following the summer break. F1 engineers hate onboard cameras. They add weight to the cars and they affect its aerodynamic efficiency. Because of that, in 2014 Red Bull hid the camera in the car's nose, instead of using the mandatory camera mountings. But as you can see, actually as you can't see, the change was far from seamless. The rules say the mountings must not be located inside the carbon structure itself. But Adrian Newey's loophole was that the camera was in fact inside the non-structural vanity panel. The trick didn't work though, and they had to revert to the traditional solution after 5 races. McLaren were the adventurous ones in 2010 when they pioneered this snorkel. Baptised the F-duct, it channeled airflow and allowed their car to go up to 6 miles faster on straights. How the system worked was both rudimentary and clever. A movable aerodynamic device wouldn't have passed the FIA regulations, but the F-duct found its way around the rules. It was up to the driver to activate the gadget, covering a hole in the cockpit with his left leg. Soon many teams copied the idea, but a few went too far. Ferrari opened the Pandora's box when everyone saw Fernando Alonso driving one-handed at the Spanish Grand Prix.
When he operates your F-duct with his left hand, changes the brake balance with his right hand, how's he steering?
I don't think with the feet, but he should steer with the hand that is available. But
he doesn't have a hand available.
I don't know. Maybe the car is too good at that. I don't know. But
the car can drive itself.
No, I would love to be. No. Let's say that he's really good driving on that. Nothing to say.
It emerged that their system required the driver to cover a hole with his hand, and Ferrari weren't the only ones. Thus, teams agreed to ban the F-duct, both for safety and cost issues, ahead of the 2011 season. This journey through Formula One's astuteness couldn't overlook McLaren's famous rear brake pedal. It was F1 photographer Darren Heath who smartly discovered McLaren's trick. Having a hunch of what he might find, he sneaked his camera inside Mika Häkkinen's retired car at the 1997 Luxembourg Grand Prix, revealing their hidden innovation. The third pedal allowed the driver to control the rear braking of the car independently and substantially improved performance by reducing either understeer or wheel spin. Stewards initially deemed the system as legal, but after Ferrari complaints in early 1998, it was finally banned.
We were fortunate in being the first of the 3 teams running the system, find a performance advantage within the regulations, and that the only response that a rival team has is to try and find a way to have it banned, as opposed to rising to the technical challenge.
Ground effect made incredible speed and downforce possible by sucking the cars to the ground. Adding skirts to the bodywork was a way of achieving this, so airflow would get trapped under the car and suck it to the asphalt. The benefits of ground effect were so massive that every attempt at banning it brought a bigger effort by the teams to find their way around it. Especially the one made by Lotus's genius designer Colin Chapman, who'd brought ground effect to Formula One in the first place.
Well, for years, of course, we've all been concerned with the effect that air has when it flows over the car, and we've been trying to do our best to stop it flow under the car. What we're really trying to do is to promote airflow under the car in order to be able to contour the underside of the car so it produces a negative lift. In other words, the air passing under the car helps to hold it on the road.
The risk of the cars taking off was high, so skirts were banned for the 1981 season. Teams quickly reacted, and Lotus's solution was the Lotus 88, a car with two chassis. The upper one was able to adapt its height, exploiting ground effect at high speeds, but still respecting the ground clearance rule when the car was stopped, while the bottom chassis was still and shielded the driver against the ferocious forces of conventional ground effect cars. Teams, however, quickly protested against it, arguing that while it shouldn't be illegal, they would all have to deploy one and the costs would be massive. The governing body listened, and the Lotus 88 died, despite all of Colin Chapman's efforts in court. In 2009, massive rule changes reduced downforce by 50%, so teams had to be extra creative to get some of it back, and it was Brawn GP who made the most of it. This was a traditional diffuser, and this is the one Brawn used. Double diffusers had a different central channel, using its shape to create a double-decker design. Their diffuser's controversial aspect was the hole in the rear, which increased the airflow speed and, as a consequence, generated more downforce. The double diffuser remained legal, and was a key part of the car that would go on to win both 2009 championships, before being banned. In 1982, three British teams, Lotus, Williams and Brabham, couldn't keep pace with the turbo cars at the front, and so found an ingenious way of racing their cars below the minimum weight limit. They did this by emptying their reserve water tanks, mainly used for brake cooling, before the race began, and making sure it was topped up again before scrutineers inspected it afterwards. Nelson Piquet won his home race as a result, but both he and second-place Keke Rosberg were disqualified, and the tactic, though technically legal, was immediately outlawed. 2 years later, it was Tyrrell who used an even more flagrant trick. They not only ran underweight cars, emptying their water tanks, but topped them up before the end of the race with an additional 2 gallons of water mixed with 140 pounds of lead shot. When the stewards discovered this, the team was disqualified from the entire 1984 championship. First introduced in 1976, Tyrrell's six-wheeled P34 showed potential right away, getting its only win at the Swedish Grand Prix in Anderstorp.
It's going to be fast down the straight because it's narrow, and it's going to be fast around the corner because it's got more rubber.
After poor results in 1977, Tyrrell discontinued their six-wheeler, but the concept didn't die. 3 other teams would develop it. March's design never made it to a Grand Prix, and the same happened to Ferrari's 312 T6. The idea then hibernated until 1982, when Williams tested another promising six-wheeler. It didn't only provide more grip, but also extracted more potential of ground effect, with longer skirts that extended the bodywork closer to the ground. Unfortunately for Williams, both ground effect and four-wheel drive were banned for the 1983 season, and all those promising designs went straight into the skip. The same fate would befall the short-lived Brabham BT46B, better known as the fan car. Created by genius designer Gordon Murray in 1978, it won the only Grand Prix it ever raced in Sweden, with Niki Lauda at the wheel. The fan was a fresh way of making the most of ground effect, and Colin Chapman, of course, wasn't very happy. Rivals were both impressed and outraged, questioning its legality right away. After just one race, political pressure killed the fan car for good. Clever and cheeky solutions have come and gone through the years, but they will always be part of Formula One's identity.